So today's mystic is a Greek mystic. Some of you probably heard about him. His name is Heraclitus, and he is most famous for the lines that I'm about to share today. At least one of those lines you will recognize. So I'll begin with that one. Into the same rivers we step and do not step. You cannot step twice in the same river. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard about this line. You cannot step twice in the same river. Everything flows and nothing abides. Everything gives way and nothing stays fixed. The Upanishads say that one of the greatest reasons for human suffering is that we often mistake all of that which is actually temporary. We mistake that for being permanent, or we blind ourselves to its temporariness. But I will add another little facet to that truth. I feel another reason we as human beings suffer is when we deem that which is permanent as non-existent. Maybe I should repeat that if it's getting confusing. So what the Upanishads are saying, they say that the reason human beings suffer is that we mistake everything that's temporary. So if you look around your life, like look at all the contents of your life, you will see, if you really pay attention, that yes, all of those components, your relationships, your loved ones, the careers that you have worked so hard to create, your inner stories, your inner narratives, your identity, your financial success or failure, all of these things, everything that you invest your time and energy in is actually temporary. It can change anytime. And I think one of the reasons we as human beings had such a hard time during COVID was because this fact was shockingly in our face. It was waking us up to the fact that everything that we thought is permanent, my plans for the weekend, my relationships, my plans for the wedding, whatever those crazy spaces that we occupy ourselves in as human beings just went away, just like that. It was taken away from us. And people were angry. People were angry for their personal freedoms being taken away. And that's where nuggets like these can bring calmness, a soothing calmness, a humility to our egoic sense of self that says permanence is the only thing that there is not. Buddha usually counsels, he says, change is the only permanence. Change is the only thing that is an eternal phenomena in this existence. Only change abides, he says, nothing else. So let's look at the lines again. Into the same rivers we step and do not step. You cannot step twice in the same river. Everything flows and nothing abides. Everything gives way and nothing stays fixed. Your life, if we were to consider your life as a river, you have the same name when you were born, when you were 3 years old, when you were 7 years old, when you were 17 years old, when you were 30 years old, or will be at some point. But at every stage and age of your life, you are the same identity from the outside, but you're not the same person. You're constantly changing, morphing, you're being affected by what you're experiencing. And based on what you're experiencing, your inner landscape is changing. Your inner weather is changing from morning to noon. Like the person you were this morning when you woke up and the person you are now is different. Would you agree with that? It's so important to breathe in this awareness sometimes. I am changing constantly. Now bring that same realization to some of the people in your life. We find comfort in assuming that we have figured some people out in our lives, right? So that's where the word labeling comes from. Once we place a label on someone, it's very hard for us to take that label off. But understand and realize that everything, everyone, every soul in this universal phenomena is the same and yet different. So it's very important to see people from fresh eyes. You have to understand why we do this, why we have this little blur of mistaking the temporary as permanent. Because the ego is very threatened when something is temporary. It means it'll have to be alert all the time. Its job is to make sure that it protects us. Its job is to make sure that we engage the circumstances. So if the circumstances are changing all the time, if there's nothing that's permanent, then it can't relax for a second. It's on the job all the time. So what we do, what it does, it creates this illusion of permanence. We create these little pockets in our life. And we say, this piece is permanent. This piece is permanent. I have found the love of my life. That's it. I'm done. Now I can rest. I can settle. Now I don't have to look or seek any longer. This I want to remain all the time. And the moment we say, I want this to be all the time, right there and then, suffering has begun. Right there and then, fear has begun. Frustration has begun. Doubts have begun. It's a pretty ironic thing, isn't it? We do want that comfort of just knowing, can I just settle into something? Maybe a career that you've been in for 30 years. Like, okay, good, I'm settled. My retirement plan is settled. Everything is good. Life is good. And then something changes just like that. I have worked with a lot of people who've dealt with so much grief over losing a career that they had invested a lot of years of their life in. It felt like a death. Same thing with relationships. When somebody passes away that's close to you, that shock that you experience is literally shattering that illusion of permanence. And that's why it feels so painful to us. So we go through all those stages of grief to ultimately surrender, because that's all we can do. Surrender into what the truth is of this existence. He says, cool things become warm, and warm grows cool. The moist dries. The parched becomes moist. It is by disease that health is pleasant. Because of evil, good seems pleasant. Because of hunger, satiety. Because of exhaustion, rest. The Greek mystics, there was a brilliance in them, kind of similar to the ancient Indian Vedic mystics. And to me, that's what I look for. I look for where they find truth, a union in a polarity. Because that's the only place you will always find truth. They use a word, the Greek mystics use a word very often called logos. That word can be used in multiple ways. It can be used to denote God, the creator, the source intelligence. But ultimately for them, the source intelligence is that which holds in union the sum of contradictions. That is why all of this spiritual mumbo jumbo feels so overwhelming to a lot of people. It's like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But just listen to these words again. Cool things become warm, and warm goes cool. Would you agree with that? Everything does. You get a cup of tea and it's going to be cool in just a little while. The moist dries. Just this morning, our little valley that we live in was filled with this beautiful mist. And the sun came up and everything's dry again. And the parched becomes moist. Ever experienced rain in a desert? It's the most magnificent thing. It is by disease that health seems pleasant. So get this. The universal laws of existence always move in rhythm. Always. There is a centrifugal force in it and a centripetal force in it, right? So everything wants to move to the center, to its core. It's a natural pull inwards. And then there is a gravity that's pulling it apart as well. It's pulling it apart towards those center of gravities. In human emotions, those center of gravities become our attachments. Wherever we put our attachment, that pull is going to take us away from our core. It will want to. So it takes a very concerted effort to train our senses, to free ourselves from the pull of the future and the draw, the gravitational pull into the past. Therefore, being present, staying present in the now is the most difficult thing for the human mind. We've kind of conditioned ourselves that way. So he's saying it's in disease that health seems pleasant. For us to know that there's always these two forces happening. Health, somebody who's healthy has no idea what they have, do they? Have you seen a young teenager who is whole and robust and full of energy? They feel invincible. They can jump over anything, they can do anything, they can take all amounts of risk with their body. And they do tend to do really crazy, stupid things too. We all did. But that was because health was a given. It's only when we maybe break our foot or maybe experience as we get older, our cholesterol is changing, our sugar levels are changing, and we start to really pay attention to health. So health is appreciated because of dis-ease. Just the play of the mind, you have to remember that. Because of evil, good seems pleasant. If there was no evil, how would you know what good is? Because of hunger, satiety. Have you ever fasted? Try doing that for a day. Fast and just live on water for one day. No matter what your comfort zone tells you, you will not die in one day. But watch what the body does. It'll ask for food. And when after a day of that discipline, you offer yourself something light and delicious, simple, something simple, it doesn't have to be elaborate or fancy or rich. Your body will feel such pleasantness, and in that pleasantness, it'll experience God. It'll experience the logos, the coming together of two polarities in a union. And in that union, God is found. Maybe you don't interpret it that way. Maybe do that next time. See between hunger and satisfaction where that meeting point is. I think that's one reason a lot of people have eating addictions. They play this game of polarity to find that, to savor that middle point. Because of exhaustion, rest. That's another way a lot of people are trying to find what I am calling God, but really it is just a place of union between two polarities. We run long marathons We train ourselves to the point of exhaustion, right? When we work out. And then when we rest, isn't that sweet after that level of exhaustion? That sweetness is what the human soul is after. And Heraclitus say, you will find that when you bring two polarities together, right there in the center, you will find that union. It is one and the same thing to be living or dead. Now, he's taking it to the next level. He says, it is one and the same thing to be living or dead, awake or asleep, young or old. The former aspect in each case becomes the latter, and the latter, again, the former. By sudden, unexpected reversal, it throws apart and then brings together again. All things come in due seasons. Into the same river we step and do not step. Isn't that lovely? Are you receiving it? Are you receiving what he's saying about the former aspect of each becomes the latter? It is one and the same to be living or dead, awake or asleep, young or old. By sudden expected reversal, everything gets thrown apart and gets brought back together again. Everything in nature is abiding by this law. It's living and existing in this law, including us. We have no control over this law, but we assume, we prefer to think that I can change that. I am the exception. That's how crazy our ego is. And the funny thing is, anytime somebody's shedding this ego, they usually come to me and ask me, Priya, it feels like I'm going mad, I'm going crazy. Topsy-turvy, the tree upside down. When you drop the ego, you understand this truth because it's sitting right there. And the evidence of this is everywhere. You just have to slow your mind down, soften your eyes, and look. Do you know that there's no new water on this planet since its emergence? Take a deep inhale and take this truth in. There is no new water on this planet Earth. It's been circulated, it's been just changing its form over and over and over again through centuries, through generations. I can get a little more morbid in this one. Like, what you're drinking as clear water today was, at some point, a dog's pee. But the saving grace of it is, it throws apart and then brings together again. As water, it changes into snow, and the snow thaws and changes into a river or a lake, or finds its way into human beings or plants or animals, however that works. And then that gets released again and flows into the ocean, gets evaporated, becomes snow, it rains and becomes snow, and the cycle continues. But in this process of the former becoming the latter and the latter becomes the former, in this process of change, notice how much this water, the same water, has gathered the debris, the pollution, the chemicals, the fish, the insects, the sea creatures, like bacteria, viruses, all this stuff. So this pure water can, at different stages of its evolution, carry and identify itself as different things. But as it changes from one to the other, one form to the other, it becomes pure again. It releases all that it was holding as its identity and becomes pure again. So our life and us The same metaphor for the soul. That's the journey of the incarnation. This identity, this body that you have, and all the experiences you are pouring into this body, all the things you identify with, your inner narratives, your outer complaints, they will all evaporate. They will. Either you can do it while you're alive and you can do it consciously, or death will do it. So from the perspective of anyone who is awakened, I know everybody thinks they're awakened, but until you see these truths, until you embody these truths, I urge you to not label yourself as that. Anyone who is alive will be dead. So there's no difference between the two. There's no difference between water and the snow. There is no difference. One will become the other, awake or asleep, young or old. So the wise sages say, don't attach yourself to these things. This is where you mistake the temporary for the permanent, the real for the unreal. All things come in due seasons. If you are in a phase of your life where nothing's working out for you, where you're getting pulled in by your old patterns over and over again, your job is to continue to exert the movement forward, to stay in the present, listen to what the present moment wants from you. Surrender your preferences to it and keep going. When the season is right, keep planting the seeds. When the season is right, the blooming will happen. That is the law of the universe. Into the same river we step and step not. You are changing, you are growing. As long as you don't lock yourself into a box, your growth is inevitable. It doesn't matter the pace, but to know that you're growing and nothing can stop that, because this is the law of the universe and we all abide by it. To remember to bow your head to this law. If I'm a river, I'm not the same. Every day I have infinite opportunities to grow. This is the reality that drives your existence and mine. And there is no place for stagnation in it. None. None of the people you know, none of the labels that you worry about are permanent. Your successes aren't permanent, just like as your losses aren't permanent. Continue to stay alive, receive the freshness of each day. Remain that fresh water that you are today as a river. And you will experience the abundance of life. So many thanks to Heraclitus for joining us today, and hope these words brought some kind of relief to your poor ego who works so hard to find permanence for you. Please give your ego permission to just enjoy what is for as long as it is. Not seek that permanence. Enjoy your relationships that you have found, you have made, as they are appearing today. But don't latch on to them. Don't claw onto them in neediness. If they're changing, if they're morphing, if they're going away, allow them. Because they will still do what they're going to do, with or without your permission. But you can either enjoy this journey or suffer. The choice is ours.